Hello and welcome to the Warcraft Academy guide to playing a Beast Mastery Hunter in patch 5.4. This guide is going to cover the basics of the rotation as well as some more advanced tips, and later talk about stats and character customization. We're going to be focused primarily on doing as much damage as possible. Use the menu at the top of the screen to skip between sections. First of all, let's quickly run over how the rotation works and what each of your abilities does. As a hunter, you have a unique resource called Focus. This acts in a similar manner to other resources in that some abilities consume it and other abilities generate it. It also regenerates automatically over time, and this increases with haste. Managing your focus properly is important in mastering your hunter. A large portion of your damage will come from your pet, but you also have a number of abilities that are part of your shot rotation. Cobra Shot and Arcane Shot are both filler spells. Arcane Shot is an instant cast, does arcane damage and consumes 30 focus. Cobra Shot has a 2-second cast, generates 14 focus when used, and can be cast whilst moving. Serpent Sting is a damage over time ability. Once it's been applied, it will automatically refresh every time you cast Cobra Shot. Kill Command is your most important and highest priority ability. It causes your pet to do a short charge towards the target and instantly deals high damage to it. This will also apply Hunter's Mark to the target. Hunter's Mark is a debuff that increases the range damage of attacks against that target by 5%. You can apply this manually using the Hunter's Mark ability, or have it automatically applied by Kill Command. Kill Shot is an ability that can only be used on targets that have 20% or less health. It does very high damage, and if it fails to kill the target, the cooldown is reset. This can only occur every 6 seconds. Normally it has a cooldown of 10 seconds. Dire Beast and Glaive Toss are both talents that are part of your single target rotation. Dire Beast summons a wild beast to attack your target for 15 seconds. Each time it does damage, you gain 5 focus. Glaive Toss throws a glaive towards the target, dealing damage to each enemy struck along the way towards the target and on the way back to you. It slows targets that it hits. Frenzy and Rabid are both pet abilities. Frenzy occurs automatically when your pet attacks. Each stack of Frenzy increases your pet's attack speed by 4%, and this can stack up to 5 times. You can use the ability Focus Fire to consume all of these Frenzy stacks, and in doing so you restore some focus to your pet and increase your own ranged haste for 20 seconds. Rabid increases your pet's attack speed by 70% for 20 seconds. This will be on autocast by default, but you'll want to turn it off autocast and use it manually for optimal use. Other than these 3 abilities, you have 3 major cooldowns. Bestial Wrath is your most important one. This increases yours and your pet's damage, and also reduces the focus cost of your abilities by 50% for 10 seconds thanks to the synergizing ability of the Beast Within. This has a 1-minute cooldown. Rapid Fire increases your ranged haste by 40% for 15 seconds on a 3-minute cooldown. Stampede summons your entire stable of pets to attack your target. This is a high damage ability and should be used as often as possible throughout the encounter, whilst trying to overlap it with external haste buffs and your agility potions. For multi-target, you have a few other abilities. Multi-Shot is your main AoE ability. This does damage to all targets within 8 yards of your initial target and gives your pet the Beast Cleave buff. This buff causes your pet's attacks to cleave nearby targets for the next 4 seconds. This allows your pet to do a large amount of AoE damage. Barrage is a talent that you'll take instead of Glaive Toss on fights with multiple targets. Barrage automatically turns you to face your target and fires shots at everything in a 40-yard arc in front of you for 3 seconds, doing heavy AoE damage. Finally, you have a group of buffs called Aspects. These are self-buffs, and you should always have one of them active. Aspect of the Hawk increases ranged attack power by 25% and also reduces damage taken by 10% if you have it glyphed. Generally, you should have this buff active at all times unless you specifically need one of the others. Aspect of the Cheetah increases your movement speed by 30%, but you become dazed when struck. This can be useful when paired with the Glyph if you need the increased movement speed. Aspect of the Pack is similar to Aspect of the Cheetah, but it affects anyone within 40 yards of you. This should be used with extreme caution unless you want your fellow raiders to be very angry at you when they become dazed. So now that we've gone over what each of your abilities does, let's talk about how to apply those abilities in your rotation. Your first priority is to ensure that Hunter's Mark is applied to the target. Usually you'll apply this once to a target before the fight begins, and from then on it'll be automatically refreshed with your Kill Command. You can only have one Hunter's Mark up at once. If there are multiple hunters in the raid, it can be beneficial to keep Hunter's Mark up on different targets so that you can benefit from increased AoE damage. You should be using Kill Command on cooldown. This is your most damaging ability and is therefore extremely important to use as often as possible. When the enemy is below 20% health, Kill Shot is next on your list and should also be used as often as possible. Remember that Kill Shot's cooldown will reset if it fails to kill its target, so you can effectively use it twice in a row each time before triggering its cooldown. Next, Dire Beast should be used on cooldown. With that said, Dire Beast does have some synergy with one of your main cooldowns, Bestial Wrath, which we'll cover a little bit later, so you won't always use it immediately when it comes up. Serpent Sting needs to be applied to each enemy you DPS. It's usually only worth applying to enemies that will live for 20 seconds or more. Glaive Toss should be used on cooldown if you're using it. If possible, try to position yourself so that Glaive Toss will hit multiple targets on the way to its final target so that it does extra damage. Whenever your pet has 5 stacks of Frenzy, use Focus Fire. The Focus Fire button will glow when this situation occurs, making it easier for you to notice. Other than that, use Arcane Shot and Cobra Shot to control the amount of focus you have. Arcane Shot should be used to dump any excess focus you may have in order to prevent yourself from capping. You never want to reach maximum focus, otherwise you're essentially wasting DPS. Likewise, you can use Cobra Shot to generate more focus when you need it, particularly if you lack focus to execute a more important ability. This is where forward planning comes in. As a hunter, it's extremely important to ensure that you have enough focus for your important abilities, such as Kill Command, Kill Shot, Glaive Toss or Multi-Shot, so that you can use them instantly as they become available. A safe way to do this is to always ensure that you have 30 focus or more, but never allowing it to go over the cap. An example of this would be weaving in Cobra Shots and Arcane Shots between each Kill Command cast. In between each Kill Command you'll get 4 to 5 casts, which will contain a mixture of higher damaging abilities, and 1 or 2 Cobra Shots or Arcane Shots mixed in, according to how much focus you have at that time. Always judge how much focus you'll need and how much you'll have over the next few seconds. Outside of your primary rotation, you also have to factor your cooldowns in. Bestial Wrath and Rapid Fire are both off the global cooldown and should generally be used immediately as they become available. However, you do want to plan around Bestial Wrath somewhat to get the most out of it. You want to make sure that every global during Bestial Wrath is one that does direct damage, ideally as many kill commands, kill shots and arcane shots as possible. To prepare for this, you should do a few things. First, try to ensure that you have high focus when Bestial Wrath comes off cooldown. Ensure that you won't need to refresh Serpent Sting during it by casting a Cobra Shot beforehand, and try to fit 2 kill commands into it by ensuring that you can use 1 kill command early on during the Bestial Wrath and another towards the end of the effect. It's also beneficial to cast Dire Beast or further immediately before using Bestial Wrath, since the focus provided by this will be extremely beneficial during it. Whether or not you have the Assurance of Consequence trinket and what version of it you have will determine how these will line up. Don't delay either cooldown by more than a few seconds to line up. Likewise, your pet's ability Rabid should generally be used on cooldown, but do try to sync it with Bestial Wrath if they're within 10 seconds of each other. Stampede should also be used on cooldown. Due to its long cooldown, you can usually only use it twice in each fight. This means it's best used in the opener, and then again as many times as possible during the encounter. You can save it for important periods of burst damage if necessary, and it's also a good idea to use it during a late heroism if possible or during trinket procs and your second Vermin's Bite potion. Against 2 or more enemies, maintain your single target rotation, but use the Barrage talent instead of Glaive Toss, and use Multi-Shot often enough to apply the Beast Cleave buff on your pet. This means you'll be using Multi-Shot roughly every 4 seconds. You should still prioritize using Kill Command and Kill Shot on cooldown. It's also very important to control your pet to make the most of Beast Cleave by having your pet attack the target in the center of an AoE pack so that it hits as many targets as possible. In addition, Serpent Sting should ideally be applied to 2 targets and refreshed by using Cobra Shot on each target as you would normally. You won't add any extra Cobra Shots into your rotation to do this, you'll simply alternate targets with it as necessary to extend the Serpent Sting. Against 5 or more targets, use Multi-Shot enough to keep 100% uptime on Beast Cleave, then use Barrage every time it's available. Other than that, use a mixture of Multi-Shot to deal AoE damage and Cobra Shot to generate focus. If you know an AoE phase is coming, make sure to cast Multi-Shot just before they spawn to ensure that your pet has Beast Cleave up, ready to begin AoEing immediately when the AoE begins. So with all that information in mind, here's how to open up in an encounter. Your opener varies depending on whether or not you have the Ticking Ebon Detonator trinket. If you do, you use a special opener to take advantage of the stacking mechanic from the trinket. First, apply a Hunter's Mark before the fight starts, and then use a Vermin's Bite potion a couple of seconds before pulling the boss. Precast either a Cobra Shot or Glaive Toss 1 second before the pull. Use Stampede on the pull, and then use Bestial Wrath, Rapid Fire, Rabid and Kill command at once. After that, use Dire Beast and then apply Serpent Sting to the boss before continuing on with your standard priority. If you don't have the ticking Ebon detonator, your opener goes like this. Apply Hunter's Mark before the fight starts and then use a Vermin's Bite potion 1 second before pulling the boss. Use Stampede as the boss is pulled and then activate Bestial Wrath, Rapid Fire, Rabid and Kill command. You can use these 4 abilities all at the same time. Next, use Dire Beast and then Glaive Toss, and then apply Serpent Sting to the boss. From here, use Arcane Shot twice, which should line you up perfectly to use another kill command. From here, just begin following your standard priority list. Pets are an extremely important part of playing a hunter. Each pet provides a separate raid buff, and so the raid composition should be taken into account when deciding which would be the best pet to use. Try to pick a pet that provides a buff your raid would otherwise be without. On screen you can find the best selection of pets to have available in your stable. Your pet should always be spec'd Ferocity unless an encounter requires your pet to tank a hard-hitting mob. Controlling your pet effectively is extremely important. One of the most important buffs, Beast Cleave, causes your pet to do AoE damage to targets around itself. A lot of the fights will require you to keep this buff up as much as possible. One way to increase the damage you deal through this is planning haste buffs around when Beast Cleave will be most effective. Haste will increase the speed at which your pet attacks, and as a result your pet will cleave targets more often. Know that your abilities Focus Fire and Rapid Fire will not affect this, as they only affect ranged haste. Pet movement and positioning is also essential for using Beast Cleave optimally, and will help to increase the time your pet spends attacking the target. To manage your pet perfectly, you can use the pet's dash ability manually by turning autocast off to enable him to switch targets more quickly. This is to avoid the ability being wasted by the autocast when your pet has to move small distances. You can also use Master's Call in order to make the pet charge towards you. This can be useful if you're stood closer to a target that your pet needs to switch to. When combining these effects with the mini charge from Kill command and Blink Strikes, you can switch your pet to a new target almost instantly, minimizing the DPS loss from switching targets. This can also be coupled with the command Move Pet to place your pet in a position closer to where the AoE will be happening, or where a priority target will be spawning so that it's in position ready for the situation. So, onto your character development choices. Your first priority is Agility, and then Hit and Expertise, each up to their respective caps of 7.5%. After that, most of your secondary stats are generally quite close together for DPS purposes, so gearing is often just about the agility increase. Generally, you should prioritize Haste, then Crit, and then Mastery if you do have the legendary Metagem, or Crit, then Mastery, and then Haste if you don't. However, in Tier 16 Heroic gear levels, a lot of hunters prefer to balance their Crit and their Mastery. As always, we recommend you use Simcraft to determine the stat weights most appropriate for your character. With that in mind, these are the best gems in Enchants to choose from. You can use the Crit counterpart to these gems if needed. Glyphs are largely situational choices, but there are a couple that will be useful in more situations than others. Glyph of Animal Bond increases all healing done to you and your pet. This increases survivability and should always be used. Glyph of Deterrence increases the damage reduction granted by deterrence. Again, this increases survivability and should therefore always be used. Glyph of Disengage is your third go-to glyph. This increases the distance you travel when you disengage, effectively increasing your mobility. Glyph of Ice Trap increases the range of Ice Trap, making it easier to place correctly. This is useful for slowing the mines on Siegecrafter Blackfuse. Glyph of Solace is useful for Paragons of the Klaxi if you need to crowd control the parasites to prevent the effects from being broken. This is not an exhausted list of glyphs, just a selection of the most useful ones for Siege of Orgrimmar. Moving on to your talent choices, each tier may have talents that are useful in specific situations, whereas some may have one mandatory talent. In the first tier, your default choice should be Crouching Tiger, Hidden Chimera. This increases your mobility by reducing the cooldown of Disengage, and increases your survivability by reducing the cooldown of Deterrence. Post Haste is better for fights where you need increased movement speed in short bursts, such as the intermission phase on Immersius or the downdraft phase on Ji-Kun. In the second tier, Binding Shot should be your default choice. When used correctly, it is an on-demand AoE stun which is highly effective and more useful than either of the other talents in this tier. In the third tier, Aspect of the Iron Hawks adds 10% damage reduction to Aspect of the Hawk. This will generally outweigh the other two choices in almost all circumstances. Spirit Bond can be useful if you spend long periods of time out of range of healers, such as on the conveyor belt on Siegecrafter Blackfuse. In the fourth tier, Dire Beast should be your talent of choice. Further is not worth using except in extremely low gear levels, and even then will often yield worse results. Dire Beast is far more reliable and will almost always provide the best damage output. For heavy AoE situations, Thrill of the Hunt should be used instead. This is great for encounters such as Galacrus. In the 5th tier, Blink Strikes is the talent of choice. This allows your pet to attack a target from up to 30 yards away, and allows him to teleport behind his target. This is a huge mobility gain, and also directly increases your pet's damage. In tier 6 you'll choose between Glaive Toss or Barrage. Glaive Toss is best for single target encounters. It also slows targets that it hits and can be lined up to hit multiple targets in its path. Barrage is better for any form of multi-target or AoE encounters. Finally, your gear decisions. You should select gear based on it having as much agility as you possibly can. Secondary stats are generally quite close together, so agility is far and away the main deciding factor. To optimize further, try to obtain the 4-set tier bonus. For trinkets, Assurance of Consequence is your best option, with Ticking Ebon Detonator as your second slot. Harem's Talisman is also a viable alternative for Ticking Ebon Detonator, but it's more beneficial for other classes and specs. Thanks very much for watching this guide. If you have any comments or suggestions, post them below or email us. And if you're interested in being coached by a top hunter, click on screen for more information.